Are you a teenager wondering why your parents keep dragging you along to church on Sunday mornings? Are you tired of the constant assumptions that you as a teenager know nothing? Or have you recently officially transitioned into a young adult and you're still processing all the trauma of your teenage years? Or are you a parent of teenagers asking how your children became the spawn of Satan? Well, hello again, and a hearty welcome to the faithful and the heathen young adults out there. We're back here with episode 2 of Unfolding Wings. We're glad you're back with us as we hope to, indeed, unfold our wings and fly, spiritually and in all other ways. You can check out episode 1, Growing Up, wherever you find your podcasts, where we explain what we're doing and why. And since the Holy Pastor shouldn't have to repeat himself, I'll just say that we're basically giving voice to the struggles of young adults in finding and living out faith with me, the Holy Pastor, a ridiculously silly Colbert Report kind of righteous guy. And just so you know, this podcast does not officially represent the views of Charlton City United Methodist Church or of Pastor John Lucy. So don't blame us if you are offended in any way, please. Today, we are talking about making the transition from growing up into being grown up. Quick survey for you out there to answer to yourself. When does a kid become an adult? At 16 with a driver's license? At 18 when you can vote? Or at 21 when you can drink? Or at 25 when you get knocked off your parents' health insurance? Whatever you answered, I can guarantee you are wrong. You become an adult at confirmation in the church. And if you haven't been baptized and confirmed in the church, then you're just not an adult. You remain a little baby child the rest of your life. You don't want that, so you better get confirmed. Now, I have here with me our friends Kayla and Diego, who missed last time, but he's here with us. You guys are confirmed, right?
Yes, of course.
Yes, I am.
Okay, excellent. That seemed hesitant, Diego, so we might have to come back to that there. But seriously, many churches are experiencing a plunge in youth attendance. It's as if kids get confirmed and then they're out of there. Or even before that, they age out of Sunday school and they are done. And then churches throw a fit that I then have to deal with, thank you very much, about how our young ones are turning away from their faith. They're learning critical race theory and turning away from our country, and they're growing into little demons. So what's going on? Since you guys are even younger than I am, and you were so recently teenagers, why are teenagers turning away from the teachings of their elders? Do tell.
All right. Well, thank you for having me today. So I know that I was such a jerk last time since I wasn't here. That's a very interesting question. So why teenagers turning away from the teachers of their elders? I think that, there's so many reasons why that's happening, from, I think, changing the views of, as generation go, their views change. And also we're seeing it more because the different views of people around the world can be shared thanks to social media, when before you were kind of just put into one little sphere, correct? And kind of just stuck in there, in that little world that you had. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's the very short answer to a very complicated, very, very interesting question, I guess.
Yeah, I totally agree, Diego. I think that social media definitely there's pros and cons, right? At the same time that it's nice to know what everybody else is thinking, it's like maybe we shouldn't know what everybody else is thinking. But I think that it also gives us a space to form our own opinions, form our own values and whatnot. And times are changing. I think that people in the church are stuck. We're stuck in this, I don't want to say conservative mindset, but we're stuck in the past. but the world keeps moving forward. And I think it's okay for us as teenagers, young adults, to grow and have our own opinions, and that they can be different from what we're learning from our elders. So, you know, a lot of my friends that don't go to church, their first answer to a question like this would be like, they're hypocrites, I don't want to be there. And I think there's like a lot to unpack within that statement, because it's not just one thing that they feel the church is hypocritical about. And also, like, as somebody that goes to church, it's like, you know, dang, like, while that is true, it's also, we're still human. Just because we're Christian doesn't mean we're perfect, you know? So that's also a short-ish answer to a very complicated question.
Yeah, so how do we get around it? So you're both saying teenagers want to form their own opinions and they don't want to just be told, but the Bible has meant one thing from the beginning throughout all time, right? There's just one truth, and our elders are trying to teach us that one truth, that one thing that God has been saying to us throughout time. So what are you saying? That you want to form your own opinions to reject God?
Yeah, no. Yes and no. I think that we need to keep in our minds when the Bible was written. You know, there's a lot of things in there that if we followed it now, people would be like, you're crazy. Are you kidding me? Like, when you go, the part that really, like, I remember when I was reading Leviticus, I think that just saying the name of that book is enough in itself. But for people that don't know, it's pretty much all these rules and laws that were given, and they're absolutely wild. You know, there's things where you have to like sacrifice certain things. There's moments where you're unclean and people can't be around you, especially like as a woman when you're on your period. It's the craziest stuff that it tells you have to do. And if I were to do it today, people would be like, you need to go to a mental hospital right now. So where was I going with that thought? What was your question again?
Do you want to form your own opinions so that you can reject God?
Yeah, so I think going with what Kayla said, the Bible was written a long time ago, and I completely understand people saying, well, you gotta, if you don't follow the Bible, then are you kind of like saying no to God and you're not following God? But we gotta understand, like, I mean, not that long ago, there was a lot of pastors in America that will use the Bible to kind of talk against marriage between, like, say, a Black and a white person, so interracial marriage. I think that the Bible is one of the greatest, also can be used as one of the greatest weapons out there. And we have to realize that, like, it has a lot of power, and the people who yield it can use that power for good or for bad. And sometimes, like, it's not that they're just evil. I think that it's hard for change. It's scary for change, especially when that change can be can have some pretty bad repercussions, or just could mean that you're sinning against God. And I think when it comes to younger people, the way that they grow up, sometimes they prefer to, not all young people, but most teenagers nowadays kind of rely on their own moral compass. And sometimes it's hard to understand why those words kind of that have been written kind of go against their moral compass, and it kind of creates this kind of conflict within themselves. I mean, if you think about it, Pastor, it was your guys' fault for telling us that we had to change the world and be special. I mean, I grew up all the time here at church. You got to do what Jesus did. And I'm sorry, but I feel like Jesus was the one who went against his own, teachers, was one of the first ones. So we're just following Jesus' steps, if you think about it.
He was a rebel.
He was a rebel. I mean, he got long hair and sandals. What more of a hippie can you ask for?
Who killed Jesus at the end of the day?
This just
I mean,
got,
that's
this
a
just got
whole other
spicy.
thing to unpack, right? But
I can't tell if you're complimenting me or not for.
I just want to put a plug in here really quick, but because of the way that Diego described like having our own moral compass, there's a show that I really like, which I'm not saying to go and watch it because it is very inappropriate, but there's a
Love
lot
is
of
Blind?
no.
No, okay.
No.
Sorry.
Fleabag. I don't know if you've watched Fleabag. It's on Amazon Prime. Season 2 is hands down the best thing I've ever seen in my life. And it's about a priest falling in love with a woman, right? That's a no. But anyway, he gives her the Bible. He had highlighted stuff in the Bible and he was like, hey, like, I want you to read this. And she was like, I'm an atheist. Are you crazy? Like, I'm not going to do that. And she comes back and she like kind of rebuttals a lot of what the Bible says. And he's just like, yes, but that's not the point, right? The point of the Bible is it's moral code. And I think that that's a really cool way to like look at it because there is so many things. The Bible contradicts itself in so many ways, right? So I think like when you look at it and just grab the big picture of what it is to be a Christian, I think that in that sense, it's a better way instead of just like cherry picking what applies here and there.
So, we're not getting paid by Amazon Prime, so
No, we're not.
we're not getting paid at all, in fact. Not yet anyway. But yeah, so are we saying that teenagers and young adults would prefer just getting the big picture stuff and then being able to fill in the rest? And it's the being told like every little detail that's upsetting?
I think that we need to focus on teaching the Bible instead of like the basic like stories that you hear over and over again in Sunday school growing up. I remember like in Sunday school, I'd be like, oh, it's a new year. We're going to hear the story of Jonah again for the millionth time. You know, I think that we need to focus on every part of the Bible. That way we can form our own opinions about it instead of just being like, oh, we only learned this story. Oh, but what about this story? I think it's good to put into practice to read it in its entirety, which is, I know it's a big feat to accomplish, but I think if we focused on that so that we can have our own opinions instead of just being like, oh, well, this book said this book said this. It'd be better if we just practiced actually focusing on reading the Bible instead of certain parts of the Bible. And then that would be I think, in my personal opinion, that would be a good way to go.
Yeah, I think this question kind of like splits in two because the first, it was like, why are teenagers, why are we, like I'm a teenager, turning away from the teachers of the elders? And then the other one with that, you know, it's kind of in that question, why, you know, they're turning away from church. I think that every generation that just do want to do kind of their own thing. I mean, as somebody with experience that I left my church at the time when I was like 15. And one of the biggest things was that I just didn't agree with what was going on in the church. And I had no voice. So no matter what I did, no matter what I believed in, I would have never changed anything in church. And I think that's why a lot of teenagers kind of leave church when they see that there's something going on wrong, because first of all, we're taught not to question people that are older. And it instead of having a discussion about the different things that go in the Bible, instead of having a good argument about it, kids are not, teenagers are not listened to. And when you're a teenager, depending, no matter if you're 15 or 17 or 18, you are now your own person. You can formulate those things. So it's kind of, you start figuring it out. I think you also start figuring out, like during that time, that maybe some people start figuring out, it's like, okay, my dad and my mom are real human people. Oh, whoever is my guardian, they're like not superhuman, and they get scared and they have flaws, and you start realizing older people don't know everything. And as you're getting older and older, and then once like our age, you realize, okay, nobody knows what's going on, and we're just trying to survive, and nobody knows the real answers. I think, yeah. So maybe that's why. If when you start realizing that adults also don't know what's happening.
Mm-hmm. I agree. I just want to add like something really quick to that. I think because I had brought this up in the childhood one, it's still about providing a safe space, right, to your teenagers. Instead of telling them like this is right, this is wrong. I think it's okay for kids to mess up, for teenagers to mess up. I think it's part of what forms us into the humans, the adults that we become. If I was, maybe given a chance to make more mistakes, to figure out what is and what isn't wrong, and to have that safe space where I'm not told like, oh my God, you're doing the worst possible thing ever. Like that is so bad. If I was given the safe space, then maybe I wouldn't feel like I'm having like a breakdown in my 20s. So I think like focusing on being loving and giving people, their teenagers, safe spaces, because as a teenager, not only are you going through like a little crisis, you're going through puberty, your hormones are everywhere, like everything feels like the end of the world when you're a teenager. So I think like maybe remembering that mindset and giving your teenagers a safe space so that they don't feel judged, by their parents, that, oh, like at church, they're going to look at me all different because blah, 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 whatever, I'm messing up here, I'm messing up there. It's going to make you have resentment towards the church because I feel like they're always pointing out like, this is bad, we need to focus on love, forgiveness, grace, all of that stuff. We're getting too caught up on the political parts of what's in the Bible.
Yeah, so of course, anyone who is currently a parent of a teenager will probably hear us talking about these things and wanting to tell us to shut up. But you know what? We have a voice, right, Diego? But Kayla brought up the number of things that happens to you as a teenager. So let's talk about that for a second. I mean, teenagers make a ton of transitions in a really short period of time. Mm-hmm. So if we stick with confirmation as the age of turning into a young adult or turning into a teenager, you get confirmed. And then if we're following the Bible, you get married and have kids. And then you start driving and graduate high school. Depending on where you live, probably you'll purchase a gun. You maybe go to college, start working full time, you're voting in elections. And before you're 21, you start following European laws and drinking alcohol, and you move out of the house. So all of this stuff is happening. How do you survive, or do you not survive? I mean, can you give advice to other teenagers how to make it through without getting to your 20s and having a nervous breakdown?
Without having a nervous breakdown, I don't know. I'm still want to know how to make it in my 30s without having a nervous breakdown. Yeah, and to tell the truth, everything is so different for everybody. Like I have no idea how it feels to be a woman or a girl, a young adult that is a part of LGBTQIA also, like, or of different ethnicity in the church, or a different, like I have no idea how that goes through, and I have no idea how they go through when as teenagers, how to survive, because that comes with a whole other load of challenges. One of the biggest thing I think that as a teenager that would have helped me if like older Diego would have come is that just like calm down. Like you're not gonna die at 25. Like you're gonna have a life, and 25 is not old. Like I should just like I remember thinking I was like, I'm gonna die at 25, and like I used to think that, and not because I was like, oh, something bad is gonna happen. I used to be like, because there's no reason to live past 25. You're old after 25. Like you're too old. Why would you even do anything after 25? So like yeah, like that will be my 2 cents in there. It's hard though, because especially with everything going on, sometimes I'm like it's hard to look forward with hope when you're a teenager. I feel like generations have failed you. My generation feels like I failed, the generation after me with how we're leaving the world. So it must be really hard. And it's just, I think that more and more the way that we treat them, and I will tell this to teenagers, it's not your fault, is that we treat you guys like what we wish that we would be. So instead of how we used to be, and it's hard to live to that expectation. So yeah, it'd be like, just calm down, life will get better. Not that much, but it will. No, I'm just kidding. It will get better. It will get better. Things will work out. And for teenagers that are in a dark spot, so a lot of teenagers in our communities have to grow a lot faster than what they would like to. They don't really have teenage years. They're kind of like a mix between a child and an adult. And just let them know, like, it's okay right now, and that there's people here to help you. And I think that's like what we should be doing too. Like, we should be out there, being there just in case somebody needs help, friends or whatnot.
I agree. I mean, I can only speak for myself in the position that I'm in, like being a pastor's kid, being the eldest daughter, it's a lot. And I think that if I were to look back, and if I had the chance to talk to 16-year-old Kayla, I'd be like, forgive yourself. That would be like my big thing. Be like, forgive yourself, give yourself some grace. It's okay to make mistakes. You don't have to be perfect. You have all these expectations, but just like, I had just recently spoken to my brother. My brother's he's younger than me, early 20s. And he said, do those people in your life, do they live their life for you? And I was like, no. And he's like, then don't live your life for them. So I think that that's such a good thing. And I wish I would have maybe heard that when I was younger, because you feel like you're just putting the weight of everyone on your shoulders. You got to be perfect, not just because you're the oldest, not because you have little siblings, like not because you're the pastor's kid, or just because your parents are, I don't know, conservative people with the big voices that get heard. Your voice is important. You matter. I think that I needed to hear that growing up as well. You have the space to make mistakes. The world is not going to end. Your life's not going to end. I would also say, find adults in your life that you feel comfortable talking to when things get rough. Because I think that if you have an adult figure in your life that is not going to judge you, regardless of the circumstances that you're in, that's going to help you. Because then you're going to be like, oh, wow, we have this mentality where adults are perfect. We're not. We're far from it. A lot of us are still having those breakdowns that we had as teenagers. And that's why I would tell myself to forgive myself, give myself some grace. It's going to be okay. You're going to get through it. It doesn't matter what situation you're in. There's going to be people that will support you, so.
It's interesting. First of all, the adult that I talk to is God. I mean, he is my personal parent. And that's obvious, though. But it's interesting, the idea of looking forward and the life ahead of us, of that causes anxiety, that we see all of these years in front of us that we need to, or think we need to be perfect, and fix the issues that the generations before us have created, and we freak out. I wonder if that has a lot to do with it. And both of you mentioned that the world isn't going to end, but teenagers nowadays might feel like, actually, there is a good chance of that happening. So, at some point in my life, we can think of the the Extinction Rebellion movement. We're not having kids because they're not going to live very long. What do you think? Do you think teenagers are, they see this life ahead of them and are worried about needing to do way more than past generations have needed to do, and that's why they're so anxious?
1000%. I feel like this generation has so much on their shoulders, and it's definitely because our generation, the generations before them have failed. While I do think that maybe we're doing a little bit better at conquering, you know, generational trauma and the way we look at other people, it's a lot. I mean, look at where we're at in the world. Look at where we're at work. You're constantly dealing with conflict. There's conflict everywhere. And, you know, as a teenager, you're just like, dang, this is the world that I have to go into. This is the stuff that I have to deal with, that I might have to fix. I think that every generation feels like that. I just think it's gotten worse. So I think that, yeah, there's a lot on their shoulders. And obviously, I wish that there was more that I could do. I'm sure that a lot of us wish that there was more that we could do, whether it be for the next generation or just ours alone. I'm sure that Diego would agree that we wish that there was something different that maybe could have been done.
Yeah, definitely. And I completely agree 100%. I think they know it. I feel like Gen Z, especially, they have protested more than I did ever when I was their age. They have gone out there, they show like support for a lot of causes. And maybe I was just, you know, not in the right high school or city where we didn't see that, and other cities did, but definitely they're more conscious, more social justice, as well as with, you know, the situation with our world and stuff like that. They're more conscious of what's going on. And I think, I mean, I think it's very different also the world they're living. I was thinking, I mean, right now we're recording within like 2 days of what's happening in Russia and Ukraine. And I remember 2003 when the invasion of Iraq happened. And I remember watching the news, but that was the only place where I could get it. I could not see what was happening on the ground. I could not see what was actually going on. It was just the news, and it was just showing, you know, the bombing. I think I remember exactly what city they were, but they're just showing that. And you know, and I was excited because I didn't know what war was at that time. And I've been kind of following what's going on right now, and I see like in TikTok, it's like huge, like a lot of people putting out there what's going on from their own perspective, and it humanizes, which is a good thing in a way. It's horrible what's happening, but good thing that it humanizes, you know, what's happened down there. And I think teenagers are able to see that, and they want to help. They want to do something about it. And one of the biggest thing is like, I remember hearing from somebody younger than me, not wanted to go to church, was because it was like, well, what I'm gonna do for 1 hour just listening to something, I could go and do something actually that is productive for 1 hour to help the world. And I was like, that's true, but are you gonna get free coffee after, you know, like, so like not that the only reason I go to church is for the free coffee and free cheese downstairs, but it's kind of true. And I see their point in a way. Like, sometimes all of this is happening around them, and they go to church, and the message that day in church, which is good because church is not just for teenagers, it's for everybody, but is how, you know, how can God help you go through internal struggles, and it doesn't connect to them in a way that it connects to a 40-year-old, a 30-year-old, or so the message doesn't connect with them. And I think it sucks because that's a extremely hard question. How do we connect with them, but at the same time make sure that we're not forgetting everybody else that is in there? And I really don't know how to answer that question.
Well, that's a good question, and I have another question. First of all, is why you're eating cheese with coffee, because that's not going to help your digestion much at all.
No,
but especially, I don't know. So we're all of some type of Hispanic descent, actually, all three of us, by coincidence.
yes.
Do you all find, like, it runs in my family that we have issues with dairy? I've been told that it's more prevalent among Hispanics.
I'm vegan, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
Cheater.
So yeah, I'm actually lactose intolerant. And
well, there we go. That's all right.
Yeah,
So
I'm actually, I'm mostly Hispanic, and my mom is half Chinese, so I am definitely should not be going anywhere dairy, but I
All right, so 3 out of 3. Not that that has anything to do with our episode today, but anyway.
Are we also all vegetarian or vegan here?
Pastor John, right?
Well, Pastor John will be at the end of the podcast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No animals.
We will convert you.
Well, my wife was for a while, but then she realized that trying to cook 2 different meals for us was silly. What was I gonna say though? So
how do we connect? Okay.
Yeah, so how do we do that? I mean, again, thinking of older folk who might be listening to this and wondering, where did we go wrong with our teenagers? Why don't we have any in the church? How do we connect with them? I mean, I know, Diego, you just said you don't have an answer to that question, but as many older people want to impart their truth, their understanding of what makes a good person. You have to listen to us, but teenagers want to form their own opinions. How do we find a middle ground and connect and teach them some things and letting them form their own opinions without going off wherever?
I think that we need to start off with giving younger people a voice. They want to be heard. Everybody has social media now. Everybody's, like Diego said, the generation after us, they've been protesting so much. And that to me, like, I wish that I would have had the guts to do something like that growing up, or that, I would have been in a school that they had kids like that, where we were allowed to have a voice, instead of being like, oh, the cops are going to show up and shut it down. These kids, they don't care about that. They want to be heard. So I think like giving them a voice within the church where they feel safe and where they feel like they won't be judged would be a way to go. And I know that a lot of the older generation wants to know, like, why aren't people coming to church? And it's because they feel judged. Like I said, the first thing they say is, you guys are hypocrites, So I think that mindset, while it is painful to know that the church is looked at like we're a bunch of hypocrites, which it is true.
Except for me, obviously.
Of course, not the holy pastor. But I think that opening a space where they feel that they can speak and they won't be judged, where they know that they can make mistakes and we're not going to turn them away and shame them. I feel like shame is such a big part of what they feel when they come into the church. Is just like, wow, they just said that up there, and there's no way I'm going to talk about the problems that I have, So I think like showing them it's okay to make mistakes and yet still want to be involved in the church, instead of being like, I have to be this perfect person and I have to, hit all these ticks before I can be accepted in the church and have a voice and be taken seriously. We can come to the church as the humans that we are and still be respected and still be loved and still, have a voice.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I completely agree. A voice, a sit at the table, however you want to call it. I think that make them, it's not, we see teenagers as some people, we have to help them. We can teach them things that we know. But when it comes to church, they're not just there to be, to just listen to a lecture, to be lectured themselves of why they should live better or whatnot, but to be part of a church. Like, that's what we all there for, right? To be part of it, to be a church is to be members. And yes, they have to be taught. And I think it's hard because it's scary. I think with teenagers, you either end up treating them like they're kids, and that's something that they don't want, or you're terrified by them. Because you remember your teenage years, and either you were like, whoa, teenagers are mean, or I was like, I was a mean teenager. And they're actually not. So, because actually, that was me. I was terrified of teenagers. And they actually just want they want to be treated like adults. Mm-hmm. And obviously, I also have made the mistake of completely treating them like adults and forgetting that in a way they're still very very moldable, and they kind of do end up looking at you for advice. And if you're just treating like adults, like your words don't mean anything, like your words won't hurt them, That's not true. Obviously, your words can hurt adults. I get hurt by words all the time. But I think with teenagers, it's a little more of less of a thicker skin. And that's not a bad thing. It's just that we shouldn't be the cause that they have to grow that thicker skin for to be adults. We should be the ones kind of a little bit of helping them grow in a healthy way. I think one of the biggest thing is we should be there as a church to help them grow, not just spiritually, obviously, not only intellectually, but also emotionally. I feel like we kind of don't see into that and how to help young adults, teenagers grow emotionally more. And that's a big part of being, growing up and being a good human.
Yeah, I hear all the time when someone stops coming to church or something, and it's because they were upset by what somebody said. People will say, "Oh, can't we just be adults? We need to deal with it." Well, I should probably have learned before we became adults how to not say stupid and offensive things. That would have been helpful because words still hurt. And yeah, so that's a good point. Hey, so we're talking about teenagers not coming to church or whatever, but we all know, of course, one of the main reasons they don't come to church is because of school sports on Sunday mornings, right? That's the one of the main reasons, right? Can we confirm that for me?
I didn't play many school sports, so I cannot confirm. Let me get a lifeline 1 second.
Yeah, I was a bookworm. I had no life, so I liked going to church. I think that the church that I went to, I was really lucky growing up as a teenager because that was where I made the friends that I have still now, about to go into my 30s. My closest friend that I talk to literally every day, I met her at church. And we were crazy teenagers together, and I think that like having just having that space where they can just be teenagers, where they can mess up. I think it's just so important. I know I'm like beating a dead horse right now, but it's just like I've been doing a lot of like self-reflection, and I'm just like, there's just so many missed opportunities that were there, growing up, where maybe I wouldn't be having such a crazy meltdown right now in my late 20s if I would just had the opportunity to have it as a teenager. So
I think Diego called in a lifeline. Did it work?
Yeah. Yes, I talked to the lifeline. The lifeline doesn't want to be recorded, but yes,
Wow.
she did play sports, and sometimes it did kind of conflict. And I think it did conflict with that. And not only sports, I think that with teenagers, they have a very full plate. I think sometimes that wasn't me as a teenager. I was not a bookworm either. I was just not there present mentally as well as physically sometimes. I was not a good student growing up, but at the same time, like I think that in so many ways, like yes, there are it's just there's so much in their plate, and I think that there's not a spot for church or for being more spiritual. I think that's why we also see a lot of teenagers kind of break down when they're growing, and also that happens also to young adults. There's so much in their plate.
I don't know why anyone wouldn't want to be on this podcast, so you'll need to tell your lifeline that she is silly.
Yeah, I know. I try to convince her. But she's cooking cookies right now, so I don't want to baking cookies. So I don't want to get her mad. Yeah. Then I won't get any cookies.
We'll forgive that. That's forgivable.
We'll send you some cookies.
Thanks.
Yeah, because we're not getting paid. We need something.
Yeah.
So I wonder, one of the questions we could perhaps talk about in future episodes that's coming to mind is what kind of a church, what form of church would teenagers and young adults really appreciate going to? We don't need to solve these problems right now, because I'm hearing that probably what would be useful for a teenager would also be meaningful for a young adult as well.
Mhm.
But that's something to think about, if it's not necessarily the lecture that people are looking for, maybe it's just getting together and singing together, something like that. So I'm seeing nodding of heads. That's great.
Forgot some
Yeah.
podcast. We're like, yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know. I forgot. I was like, oh yeah, this is a podcast. They're only gonna hear our voices.
Yeah.
Yeah, I put on makeup for this. Just
I
uh
see that your beautiful purple hair is cut, which it saddens me.
yeah, I mean it was never really purple, but are you
Wasn't it purple?
colorblind,
it was like
Diego?
green, dude. It
Yeah.
was like
Oh,
green.
I might be a little bit colorblind to
It
LSU.
was well, it was purple last year. It's purple last year. So
Oh,
maybe
last year, yes,
yeah,
been
yeah,
long.
yeah. So
Um,
oh yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead, Kayla. You were gonna say something meaningful.
Yeah, I was gonna say like maybe as a teenager now, look, I would say like social justice is such a big thing for them. So being involved in stuff like that and being able to do that through the church, maybe that would get kids back in church again. Because I know that even for me now, like volunteer work, that's where you'll see me show up the most. So
I completely agree. I think that we shouldn't be focused so much in like, oh, who's coming on Sunday, and kind of focus on maybe like work that they can do. They can be involved in a way that is meaningful, because that's what they want to do. They want, I mean, everybody likes it, like that gratification that you get when you help people, and also tying that maybe to teachings while that's happening. I mean, there's really good youth groups out there. I know I heard of like churches with really good youth groups that do it already, that have a good group coming in. And if you don't have teenagers coming in your church at this moment, then you have to kind of look in and see why especially they're not going to your church. Like, is it what we represent that is not representing the world this moment? Or is it just we're a little bit outdated? But you don't have, I think that with churches, they miss the mark by saying, oh, what we need is to just make everything more modern and have, I don't know, Twitter accounts and TikTok things. And you can do that, and that can be good. Also, you can miss the mark and completely just, be cringe and make people just kind of like, oh no. But I think that the biggest thing is just being true to who you are. I think that anybody would probably look at that and be like, yeah, this is somewhere where I want to belong. Because if you're not true to that, then it's kind of just, everything's just a gimmick. And I think people see that. People, especially teenagers, can see through that really, really fast. Yep. And two, they've been in school all week long. They don't want to sit down for our lecture. So if you're a pastor out there that is doing that 40-minute sermon, like maybe cut it down a little bit. Just kidding. But no, all seriously,
You better be kidding.
I love your hour-and-a-half sermons. They're lovely, Pastor. No, but I think that's that's one of the biggest things is they want to be active, they want to be involved, they want to see that what they're learning and what they have learned their whole lives. Because if they're going to church when they're teenagers, it's gonna be a good percentage that have been going with their family for a while. Maybe they want to put that into practice. I think a lot of times the teachings that we get at church about the self-reflection and how we can be better internally, that's when we get older and we get a little more like, okay, yes, I need to feel good about my week, because I need to feel that God is with me. I need to learn how to be a better person right now. But with teenagers, they want to see like, how can I change the world? Because they're seeing this big things that are happening and they want to be helpful.
You made me think of like the way I look at teenagers now, because like you said, some people are scared of them, some people just don't respect them and treat them like children and blah blah blah. But like, I mean, if you really look at this generation, the teenagers now, they're doing work that maybe the church should be doing. You know, they're the ones that are speaking up and protesting and being there for the marginalized, for the people that don't have voices. I think they're doing an excellent job at things that maybe we're lacking in the church. Maybe that's where we're going wrong. You know, we need to be there for the people that don't have voices, and teenagers who feel like they don't have voices are speaking up for those people because they can relate to that. So
Yeah, we need to listen to our teenagers too. I think we shouldn't just have them and be like, hey, listen, like we're a church that also has a good diversity of ages, but also be like, oh, like they bring a lot to the table from, like what's going on, technology, better ideas. They bring a lot to the table, more than just like, well, that's the youth group doing their side thing, more like, they're part of this church. And so like, yeah, I completely agree.
yeah.
Cool. So if you are a teenager or a young adult, recently graduated from teenagehood, make sure you tell your churches what's important to you. Tell us what's important to you so that we can do it, and hopefully your church won't judge you for not just sitting there and listening and being an obedient person. I'm pretty good at being genuine. I don't try to stay with the times technology wise just for the sake of it. My clock is my TikTok account, and my clock is telling me that we have been doing this for a while. So did we learn anything today? I think we did. I think we learned that we're awesome, this podcast, that I'm the best pastor there is, and also that we need to listen to the people in our churches, especially our younger folk who have passion and who want to put their faith and their passion into action. I think that's a good lesson for all of us. So awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, so stay tuned for not stay tuned, but be attentive for our next one. Our next episode is going to be on dating. We're going to start getting into some really solid young adult topics, including dating. Yeah. Risque, as they say. So tell your friends to subscribe to our channel, Unfolding Wings, on Spreaker or wherever you get podcasts, so that we can continue producing and improving our content that is meaningful to you and to other young adults exploring faith and life in general. Now that we've covered all of our daddy and mommy issues, we can get into that good stuff. So until next time, keep it holy, friends.